Hey there, dirt bike people. I'm Chuck from TrueTech, and today we're going to talk about KTM TPI clutch issues. Although this is about TPI specifically, a lot of the KTM clutches are the same, and this will apply. Much of it will apply to non-KTM bikes as well. The main differences are a hydraulic clutch versus a cable clutch on primarily Japanese bikes. The clutch damper system is different on the KTMs, and also the Belleville spring or the DDS clutch. Next to TPI running issues, clutch issues are the most common thing that I encounter. Most clutch issues are very simple to solve if you know what you're looking for. I do so many of them. I got a flowchart, which I'll include in the description below, and I'll take you through it in a few minutes here. The two very common issues that I hear about are clutches dragging and clutches slipping. The first thing to do with any clutch is to make sure that you have clutch free play. That's with a cable clutch or with a hydraulic clutch. This is a beautiful drawing of a clutch. Cables and hydraulics, the same. This is the push rod, this is the clutch. Over here we have the pressure plate. When you pull your clutch, what you're doing is disengaging the clutch by putting pressure on the pressure plate. It moves the pressure plate away and it releases the tension that's on those clutch plates so that they can slip past each other. Now over here, you'll either have a cable or a hydraulic line. It doesn't matter. If you don't have any clutch free play, what's happening is you're putting a little bit of pressure on that push rod, and it's going to move that pressure plate away just a little bit and eliminate some of the tension that is needed to drive your bike forward. It's going to cause slipping. With hydraulic systems, there's an added complication. The master cylinder, this is basically how it works. Let me bring you in a bit closer. In here, you've got brake fluid. This is the reservoir, and underneath the reservoir is the master cylinder. The master cylinder has a piston which pushes the fluid from the master cylinder down through the line, and it pushes on the piston that's inside the slave. The slave puts pressure on the push rod to do what we just talked about. Now, this is a bit of an exploded diagram. It's certainly not to scale. What needs to happen as your clutch and the hydraulic fluid expands and contracts, there needs to be free flow between the master cylinder and the reservoir here, and this is called the bypass port. So when you pull your clutch lever, what you're doing is pushing the piston past this bypass port, and at that point it starts making pressure and it forces the fluid through the line to disengage your clutch. I suppose in reality what I should do is put this hole right here. If you don't have clutch free play, basically if the clutch lever is pushing on this piston at all, it doesn't even take a millimeter, just a fraction of a millimeter tension on this is going to move this piston past this bypass port. As soon as that happens, the fluid in here isn't able to move freely back and forth between the master cylinder and the reservoir. Usually what happens, partway through a race or on a ride, this fluid starts to heat up and it starts to cause the clutch to slip because it disengages. The fluid is pushing on the pressure plate. It is absolutely vital to have a little bit of free play between the lever and the piston. After you've verified free play, both hydraulic and cable, you want to make sure that your clutch fluid is clean and that nothing is obstructing this bypass port, and that's pretty easy to do. Basically, you want to bleed your clutch, and when you do that, clean out this reservoir as well. Oftentimes, if you haven't replaced it in maybe a year or so, or several months if you're racing or more aggressive, you'll get a bunch of black gunk in here, and if you let that go too long, it'll actually plug up this bypass port. Another thing that can happen is inside the slave cylinder, this piston will have an O-ring. When you pull the slave cylinder off, it's usually 3 bolts. You can see the piston in there. You can pull that piston out and change that O-ring. That O-ring is very special because on one side, this side, is brake fluid, so like .4 or .5.1 generally. The O-ring that's on this slave piston needs to be resistant to both brake fluid and oil. If you put the wrong O-ring on it, chances are it's going to swell up and it's going to leak. Bleeding the clutch is usually pretty easy because gravity puts the bubbles up and the fluid down. Usually what I do is I angle the bike to the right a little bit and then I turn the handlebars so it's a straight shot from the slave cylinder up the line to the master cylinder and out the reservoir. Then I just wiggle the lever a little bit. That's if I suspect that there's bubbles in the line. Sometimes I need to rotate the master cylinder on the bar a little bit. No big deal. Think like an air bubble. Air bubbles go up. Now, assuming that there's no setup issue, by far the most common issue with the KTM clutches is the dampers. The dampers are just that. They dampen the impact when you get on the throttle or you let out the clutch. They dampen that jarring between the outer and the inner basket. Most other clutches have the dampers behind the clutch in the big gear on the back. That dampens between the gear and the outer basket. KTMs are a little bit different and they wear out a lot faster, but they are very easy to change. Basically, if you pull off your clutch cover, pull the pressure plate off, there's a little plate inside the inner hub. I have a video exactly on how to do it. I'll include that up here. If there's any play in that little plate on the inside of the hub, the clutch dampers should be changed. The OEM KTM ones tend to wear out in 20 to 30 hours, so it's very common for TPIs to start dragging the clutch very early on in their life, and it's definitely a good idea to replace it with the Rekluse dampers because they last much longer and they are only twice the price. The next most common thing that I encounter is either worn out frictions or worn out steels. They wear out in different ways and they cause different symptoms. If your steel plates are worn out, you're going to get dragging. Steel plates wear out by warping. Warping is caused by excessive heat or just prolonged excessive use. If you're hard on your clutch, you might get 10 hours out of it. That would be like in a supercross application or a heavy sand motocross application on, say, something like a 250F. A lot of enduro riders, if you're not very hard on your clutch, you'll get north of 200 hours. This is what a steel plate should look like. Notice it's silver. It looks like steel. In here, you can see that there's a little bit of a line here. As steel plates wear, as they get hot, this area here will start to turn brown or blue first. If there's a little bit of discoloration, it's usually not too bad. As they wear more and as they get more warped, you'll see that the bluing or the browning will start to come through this area here. Once they're totally shot, these things will be blue. You'll see rub marks on them, and that's how you know that your steels are warped. When your steel plates are warped, obviously they're going to take up more space because they're waving, and that's what's causing the dragging. So when you pull your clutch in all the way, the bike still wants to creep forward, or it clunks a lot when it's in gear. A little bit of clunking is okay. Dragging while it's on the stand and in gear with the clutch in, totally normal. But if the bike doesn't want to stop when you pull the clutch, you probably have a steel plate issue. This is a friction plate. Friction plates wear differently. Friction plates rarely get significantly thinner. Every now and again it'll happen, but what happens more often is that these friction pads on here, they get hard and charred. I can dig into the corner of that with my thumbnail really easy and pull material off. You can actually see that I've pulled a little bit off there. That's a good friction plate. Oftentimes, friction plates and steel plates will wear in tandem. Either the friction plates are starting to get glazed and they're not grabbing as well anymore, and that will cause excessive slipping and excessive heat to build up, and that will cause the steel plates to warp. Or the other way, if excessive heat is happening, the steel plates warp, it's causing extra friction when the clutch is in. That's also going to cause slipping in some cases because there isn't as much surface area on that steel plate, and that's in turn going to burn out the friction plates. Most of the time, I'm replacing frictions and steels together. On older bikes, in an extreme situation, you're going to get a lot of notching in the clutch basket. That notching is just caused by the clutch plates constantly slamming against the clutch basket when you're engaging and disengaging. Happens more on motocross bikes. It also happens a lot more on Japanese bikes because Japanese bikes tend to use aluminum clutch baskets, whereas KTMs use steel clutch baskets. KTM clutch baskets are extremely durable. In very extreme cases, you'll even see that notching on the inner basket, but that's really rare, and that's usually only in extreme situations. The next thing, like I mentioned, the KTMs use a DDS spring or a Belleville spring. Basically just, it's another name for a conical spring. The spring is just a plate that is cone-shaped like that. The KTM manual shows you in detail how to set that up. Basically, once all of the clutch bolts are in place, they bolt in the middle there with a little ring. Once those bolts are all in place, this spring needs to have a minimum amount of deflection. If the spring is all the way flat, it's not going to provide enough tension on these clutch plates, and that can cause slipping. If there's less preload on this spring, if it's not as flat, it's going to make your clutch stiffer. You'll notice on the KTM clutches on this little ring here, there's positions 1, 2, and 3. That is going to affect how stiff the clutch feels, but what's more important is that you get the deflection correct on this. Now, 9.5 times out of 10, when you put new clutch plates into your clutch, you can put this ring on setting number 2, and that's going to be just fine. It is a good idea to check that deflection though, and here in the manual it shows you exactly how to do it. Now, something that I don't see very often, but every now and again, people are using the wrong oil. It's pretty difficult to use the wrong oil unless you're buying it at Walmart and buying oil for a Honda Civic. Diesel oil works just fine. Oil that goes in a gas engine is usually not fine. The difference is that automotive oils have friction modifiers. Something that I see commonly is people put gear oil in their transmission, 75-90. What you want to look for is the rating. Gear oil is not the same as engine oil or transmission oil. This is AMSOIL here. It's actually for Harley. But what you want to look for there is JSO MA or MA2. That means that it's clutch safe. Here's some fancy expensive Maxima. On here it's a little harder to find, but here it is. JSO, MA, and a bunch of other stuff. Most people can feel it pretty quick if they're running the wrong oil. Basically, your clutch is just going to start to slip like crazy. The engagement is also going to feel really weird. And if you're wondering about Rotella, yes, it's fine. It's literally rated for clutches. If you're somebody who's really sensitive to what your clutch is doing, you might want to get into changing the weight of oil that you're using. And there is a little bit of confusion with that. So this gear oil here, which you don't want to use, you can see it's 75W90. When you see that W in between the two letters, it does not mean weight. It actually stands for winter, and I guess that's the guy that invented the system. That's going to tell you that you have a multi-weight oil. So like 10W40, that's 10 winter 40, and it's going to have a viscosity, that's a 10 weight when it's cold, and a 40 weight when it's hot. There's all kinds of chemistry magic that I don't understand. What you don't want to do is get that confused with 80 weight. If you see one number and a W, sorry, my marker's dying, that is weight. Typically, you'll see that with Bellray Gear Saver, you'll get it either in 75W or 80W. 75 or 80 weight is roughly equivalent to 10W40. So if you want a little bit thinner, you can go with 75. If you want a little bit thicker, you can go with 80. If you're using an oil with a variable index, you could start with 10W40, you could go to 10W30, you could go to 1050 or 2050 if you want it a little bit thicker. Most of the time it's not necessary. 10W40 is usually about where you want to be. If you're really picky though, you may notice a difference. Another thing that you can do if you're fine-tuning your clutch, you may have heard of guys running a 10 or a 9mm master cylinder. Basically, a 9mm is going to move less fluid for the same amount of stroke. What that's going to do is it's going to require more of a pull, but it is going to give you a finer adjustment so you can modulate your clutch a little bit more. That will often cause the clutch to drag when it's pulled all the way in. But again, if you're really sensitive to what your clutch is doing, you may like the feel of a 9mm over a 10. In most cases, I prefer a 10 because it's going to move more fluid, and a lot of times people are unnerved by a dragging clutch, and fair enough. A 10mm is going to move that pressure plate away from the clutch and disengage it quicker with less throw, so you're going to get a little bit less sensitivity in your lever movement. If you like the way that I explain stuff, you may enjoy the courses that I'm starting. I have a 6-part series on tire changing. It's very methodical, it's concept based. We discuss concepts, I demonstrate techniques, and then we take those two things and we use those to help you build a procedure that works well for you. I'm currently working on a suspension course, and after that, I'm planning on doing an electrical course, but it's going to be very practically applicable to dirt bikes. If I can't do that, I'm not building it. If you want access to those types of things, I have built a TrueTech community. The courses are interactive. There's discussion groups attached to them. I'm actively involved. There's also a separate forum where you can interact with other like-minded dirt bike people who are invested in learning more about repairing their dirt bikes. It's only $7 a month. I'll include a link in the description below. If you like this video, I would appreciate if you let the algorithm know in whatever way you see fit. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in the next one.